everybody. Yes, Suzanne is here. She's just reporting to Lynette the latest spying from our friend Brenda across the veil and validating that just to make sure I'm tuned in to the team. And I knew I was anyway, but yes, indeed, Lynette did have hiccups earlier, according to Brenda. And Lynette just validated it.
Uh-oh.
Hi, everybody. Let's have a big thank you for Bev and Lynette for what we call the pregame show, just welcoming all of you in. A lot of you back for more. Thank you so much. That's very validating to me. And a lot of new people, first time here for mentoring. Buckle your seatbelt because we're in for 2 straight hours of high energy, love and insights and evidence and celebrating the spirit world. I was watching a few of the greetings coming across there, and Ty and I have just finished going over our entire summer tour schedule. We leave 1 month from now in our RV heading west across the country for 5 months to visit people and do events. And I noticed that Tracy is in Taos, New Mexico. Tracy, I don't know you, but why don't we meet for coffee? We're going to spend a few days in Taos, so you can go to the contact page on my website and contact Bev and she'll put us in touch. That would be fun. I love stuff like that. Spontaneous. It felt like a little setup from Spirit because we had just been going over our time in Taos. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. Speaking of events, looks like things are opening back up again. So I've checked with the team. They said, go for it. And I'll be doing several live events this summer. Of course, my Holy You retreat in Unity Village, but that is filled. However, we're about to announce pretty soon here. Let's see. The same class that I just gave online for the last 2 days over the weekend, I'm going to do in person in beautiful, stunning, magical Sedona, Arizona, September 17th and 18th. That's a Friday and Saturday. So if any of you heard of it, and even if you took it already and want to take it again, but in person, stay tuned to my newsletters, to my events calendar, and we'll be putting out details about that. I'll be teaching my mediumship class for mediums. Serving Spirit is the name of that. That will be in Park City, Utah, and I don't have a clue what the dates are, but we will be putting that up soon. It's probably August. I don't remember. And late June, I am doing a 1 evening workshop in beautiful Carbondale, Colorado. So it's just fun to be thinking about seeing people in person. There's nothing like that. However, I know you won't be able to deny the energy that we as a group share here tonight. Let's see. Anything I'm forgetting? No, that's it as far as events and such. How this evening will go, pretty standard format that we enjoy, thanks to my team in Spirit. Anytime I do a reading here with wows and evidence, but also with a lesson for all of us about the afterlife, about connecting with loved ones across the veil, whether you're a medium or not, I ask permission of my sitters, my clients, to share some of those wows, and I have pages of those to share this evening. Really good stuff. And then the same things I put out in the email about ways to improve our lives here, our relationships, and raise our consciousness. When we do that, it helps our connection across the veil amazingly. And I'm a testament to that. I've been reading in the last few days a book called Believe, and that's L-E-E in the middle because it's written by a shining light mom. That means she has a child across the veil. Roseanne Norris is the author, and her son Lee, that's why the book is called Believe, passed a few years ago, and she's going to be my guest on the Messages of Hope radio show this Thursday. So I've been reading her book, and the reason I'm bringing it up now is because, like most of us who have suffered one of those losses that just takes your legs out from under you, Roseanne didn't see a way out of the darkness at all until she started down this path that I've been on since my Susan passed. And it's the step-by-step receiving the signs and hearing the evidence from our loved ones that transforms our worldview and hence our lives. And that's why I start out with the evidence, then move into the teaching, but still weave the evidence in. And that's what I'll do tonight, especially because any teaching and insights I get from the guides, all of the evidence that I share up front serves two purposes. it shows us there really is a greater reality. We are not just here in earthly bodies for a temporary time, and then there's nothing after it. And it validates all of the teaching that comes later. So I hope that you'll enjoy that and celebrate this beautiful proof of an afterlife with us. Let's begin with an invocation to create that beautiful field for us all to enjoy each other's presence together. So would you join me, please, with a nice, deep, relaxing breath. Breathe in slowly, breathing in from above and below in your mind's eye, as if you're sitting in a shaft of white light. And now exhale slowly, slower than you inhaled, and release anything that doesn't serve you here right now for the next couple hours. Just settle into being present. Move your awareness to your heart, and let's think of one thing that happened today that you're grateful for. Whatever just gives your heart a beautiful lift. Ooh, I just had a flood of those. And with that lift, send that energy outwards with a visualization that your inner light is now touching every one of us gathered here for this purpose. And whether you're watching live or in a recording later, trust me, that energy continues to flow. So now as one group, may we share the purpose of sitting in the presence of spirit and coming to know ourselves as expressions of this one spirit. May we celebrate how spirit divides itself into seemingly separate parts, but never independent from each other, all a part of this beautiful flow of light and love. May we feel that, and may we leave here changed by that to share our light with others. And may each of us hear exactly what we need to hear tonight in a way that helps us stretch and grow. With so much gratitude, let's just affirm, so it is. All right. Okay. So let's just start right in with some of the evidence from my readings in the last month. And this is why I never have a shortage of things to share with you in these sessions. It's truly a gift. I sat with a father of a daughter. Both of them were my clients. We were on Zoom, and dad showed up and daughter was on the screen. And I looked at him, I said, how long since you two have seen each other in person? And they said, been a while. And I said, well, go ahead and say hi to each other. So they greeted each other on Zoom, and then off we go. I had no idea who they wanted to hear from. And any of you who are working mediums know that it's very challenging not to make assumptions right off the bat. I have a father and a daughter, but where's the mother? They may have the mother wife across the veil. But I know from trial and error and experience that those assumptions will get you in trouble and can lead to imagining things that aren't really happening. So what you do is recognize assumptions, put them out of your mind, become a blank slate, and let spirit run the whole reading. So I tuned in, and the man's mother, his mother, came in right away. Not over here. I felt her over here. And that was the daughter's grandmother, of course. After the reading, this gentleman, I didn't know he was one of those scorekeepers, sent me an email with a list of 45 validations from the reading. I was very happy to see that, and that he was able to validate them all. But it's kind of funny to have him keep score like that. But one of my favorite things that Mom showed from across the veil, and you could feel the love between her and her son and granddaughter, was that her faith was very important to her. I felt it, but she also kissed a cross. That's a symbol in my work for faith is important. And then she held the book, and clearly it was a Bible, and she showed me writing in it. So it's like charades the way I work, but it comes with the feeling and the knowing. And I said she has a Bible that's very important to her, but this one has lots of her own writing in it. And in that validation, he didn't give me a lot of validation at the time. I don't want it during the reading. I want that flow with the spirits. Later, he sent me a lot of photos, and one of them was the fact that his mother actually had 3 or 4 Bibles. They had distributed those after she passed, but he hung on to one. He opened it up to take a photo of the inside, filled with her handwriting of their family's personal history inside that Bible. So it's those kinds of things that let you know, hey, Mom and Grandmom is still right here. Then what was really cool was Grandmom handed a baby over pointed at the daughter, and I knew she was telling me, and she said, son, the granddaughter has a son across the veil. And so now I'm sensing, tuning in, and it's really cool how grandma opened the psychic door so I could sense that, see those images. And in fact, we had a very nice connection with the son. And one of the first things he showed me, not a baby, he was a bit older than that. He opened up a shirt and showed me, I said, he showed me a great big S from Superman. And oh, all of you, I wish you had seen the daughter, the son's mother. I wish you had seen her reaction. She visibly went like that. She was clearly very tense and trying not to be emotional. But in her father's email later, it was his grandson, he sent a picture of a quilt someone had made from his daughter's son's shirts. And front and center in that quilt was the great big Superman S. So, you know, of all the things that those in spirit can pick out to share, to say, I'm still right here, they know what they're doing. Sometimes they give some of the silliest things, but they usually come with a nice emotional feel. So I always love when spirit tells us current events. Why is that so important to all of us? It shows that they're part of our lives now. They know what's going on with us. But in this case, with the father and the daughter, I didn't realize that several of the items were current events. Normally I have a symbol. The spirits will make this motion as if to say, now, now, now. This is a current event. But in this case, the mother, the man's mother, the grandmother, made a motion like this and handed her false teeth towards her son. And I thought, that's strange. I said, well, she must have had false teeth. And he said, yes, she did. It occurred to me at the time that usually when people are showing me they had false teeth, all of my upper teeth get a pressure. Physically, I can feel it. But she didn't do this. And I thought, oh, she's doing it differently, showing it this way. It was only later in his validation email that he said, I figured out what she was doing. Yes, she had false teeth, but I've been thinking about getting them myself. So that showed again that our loved ones don't just see what's going on currently, they're in our thoughts, which we have so many validations of that. Everybody hears that and says, oh my gosh, they hear what I'm thinking, and we get a little worried. And it's true. Better get ready for it, because when we're all across the veil, we can't hide anything. We're all just an open book. We're kind of at an advantage here in the human world in that regard, but really, isn't it a disadvantage? Because it causes us to hide things and feel shameful about things, when in fact, if we could just live like the spirits do and realize if you can't hide it, then you better just be love and loving. That would be much better way to live. Anyway, let's see, there was one other thing she showed me. Oh yeah, grandma showed me stirring a big vat of pea soup. And again, for some reason, didn't give me the now, now, now sign, but later he validated that this gentleman, her son, had just recently made pea soup for the first time in his life. And it was so good, he made it again 1 week later. So how nice to know that mom is there in the kitchen watching him and standing beside him as he does that in spirit. So I hope that brings all of you comfort to hear these very mundane, loving, homey type things that our loved ones across the veil are familiar with. All the evidence was wonderful, but as I teach, always go for the messages. The evidence backs up what the spirits came through to tell. What do they want their loved one to know? And this son across the veil, the young boy belonging to my client's daughter, who was with us during the reading, wanted his mother to know his passing was not her fault. And clearly he showed us how he passed, and it couldn't possibly have been her fault. It was a physical thing that happened to him, not an accident, and not to feel guilty about it. And it turns out that afterwards in that validation email, my main client, the dad, told me that was exactly why he had asked for the reading. His daughter has been suffering for years and carrying guilt that somehow her son's passing was her fault. And, you know, grief does silly things to us to make us think that we could have changed something like an illness, or what I won't go into details about what took this young boy, but to hear it from him and to have that validated is such a blessing. And it's why we do this work. Okay, so anybody who's a working medium may know that sometimes we just don't know if we're getting through to our sitters or not with the awesomeness of these connections. We get good evidence. We have beautiful, valid messages, and some people are just not reactive. But I've come to know that often that's just a guardedness because they're afraid to show their emotions publicly and let you know how much pain they're in. And it was just beautiful in a recent reading when I just kept getting lots of evidence, beautiful messages, and my sitter's just sitting there saying yes, and of course the occasional no, because that's the way readings go. And then I said, well, I know this is a song that comes up once in a while as a sign from a loved one, but I haven't heard it in easily a couple hundred readings. But your loved one tells me that somewhere over the rainbow is your song and your sign from them. And oh, for the first time, off come the glasses, wiping the tears away. And it was like, okay, that's good. I have noticed recently, though, and it's just an observation, how many clients I have seen recently who come in and it's just my heart opens and we share a big smile and they're all excited and they're all smiles. And then the loved ones come in and I receive from those across the veil some of the most tragic stories. In many cases, it's a child who passed, and then you just see the loved one's true feelings coming out. And it just shows me how many people are walking around in pain, but putting on a great big smile because that's what everybody expects from them. So when we run into people and they say crabby things or they act out, boy, that's true, isn't it? That statement that you just never know what people are going through, and just a loving smile or comment can really make a difference. Okay. So I showed you at the beginning of this session how I tuned into my friend Brenda, our friend Brenda, across the veil, and I say, hey, what's Lynette doing now? And she tells me, and in this case, it was the hiccups today. But before one recent reading, I usually don't take a hot drink up with me before a reading because I want to be just ready to go. But I had not quite finished a cup of hot chocolate, so I brought it up with me knowing I had a few minutes. Just as I took a sip, Brenda, without even tuning into her, says, Lynette just took a hot sip too. And I texted Lynette and she goes, this exact moment that you texted me. So do you see how those across the veil can see multiple things at once, be with multiple people at once, the big picture? It's all consciousness. When we don't have a body anymore to keep us focused inward and drawn out by the things in our immediate outward environment, it's truly stunning how much more we see. So I started a reading for a mother and daughter together, and I knew nothing at all about them. At first, the reading was supposed to be just for the mother, and when she asked if her daughter could sit in on it, Lynette knew what to do. She knows that I always have her ask, it's okay to have two of you, but are both of you completely open to mediumship? Because it will affect the energy. If one's really into it and the other's a skeptic and sits there like this, arms all crossed. And she assured me they're both good, both up for it. So again, it's a case of two people, a mother and a daughter. The mind goes to, could be the husband and father. And I try not to do it, but in this case, I tuned in and I did sense a partner right in the middle who let me know this is this young girl's father. The girl was about 19. Yeah, the daughter was about 19. But the husband went like this, took a ring off and threw it off to the side. And mom confirmed, that's my sign for divorce, that this was her ex-husband. All right. So there was just a sense of heaviness around this man, a very clear feeling of depression, and suddenly a knowing. It's just a knowing without him even saying it or showing me. I just said, your father took his own life. And they both looked a little stunned and said, yes, he did. And later on, he actually showed me how he did it. But it's the knowing that is a very high form that I hope that all of you mediums will set the intention to get. When that spirit is merged in your energy field, you become one, and that's how you have that clear cognizance. So he had very important messages for his daughter. He almost shouted at me, "Do not feel guilty about this. You had nothing to do with my taking my own life." And he showed us why he did it. He said, "I can see what you're doing to yourself with your thoughts." Hold on to that thought. So again, those across the veil see us, know what we're thinking. It turns out that's the whole reason the mother requested the reading, because she knew her daughter was beating herself up. So once again, do you see how those across the veil know exactly what we need? And if you took my personal mediumship class this last weekend, you understand why. Because we all arise from the same sea of consciousness. So all is known at the deepest level, and it comes up in a perfect way. What was very interesting was, I said, your father's coming with him, bringing 2 guides, one on each side, and they're telling me he hasn't been over there long enough to learn to communicate clearly. So they're here kind of as energetic interpreters. And it turns out he'd only passed 3 months ago. So that was interesting. After a lot of emotional issues about the cause of his passing and actions that he'd taken, he showed me a roller coaster, and I knew he wasn't talking about moods up and down. I clearly saw a roller coaster. I had just been having a conversation about roller coasters. In fact, I think it came up in one of the Brenda Sign Game things. And at first I wondered, is this coming up? Is it my imagination because I was just talking about it? So you check, you lean in, and no, I'm supposed to mention a roller coaster. And I said, your dad's showing me really, really good times with you, his daughter, and wants you to focus on that. So it turns out that that was so meaningful to his daughter, because his dad had bought his dream car, a Porsche. And he and she would ride around in that car. I hate to say this, but they told me later, 175 miles per hour in this Porsche. And he was so impressed by his daughter's fearlessness. He always commented how brave she was. Well, we're not going to make a judgment here on people that drive 175 miles an hour, but he said, this is our roller coaster. And this is how we do roller coaster rides. So he brought forth one of their happiest times that they would do quite often as a way of showing her that he's still very much around. And so that was their thing, which I just love. And then, just by way of evidence, it was so cool. He showed me, he's so proud. I'll put it in first term. He said, "I'm so proud of you with all the work you're doing for social justice and to change the world." And then he showed me that she is on a path for a medical field, but she can't decide whether to be a doctor or a scientist. Do you know that that is exactly what's going on with her? She's in school, can't decide whether it's pre-med or what to do with that medical field, but how is she going to work that into helping to change the world, because social justice is her thing. Now, many people might think I was just psychically picking up on this young girl, but not when you have dad here in spirit. You can feel his personality. You have 2 great guides translating for him, and it is interactive and creative and so full of love. That is not telepathy or psychic work. So imagine being 19 years old and learning already that the spirit world is real, how that would change your world. And hopefully by hearing some of these stories, you get to understand how very real they are. And her mom later told me that her daughter struggles with decision making, and her dad clearly stated, "I'm here to guide you as best I can, even from across the veil, and I'll help you to make decisions. Just ask me." So I just want to read an email I got from that mom. She says, "Our 19-year-old daughter is living with me and feels a tremendous amount of guilt and responsibility for not saving her dad. Her question every morning is, where is dad? I try to share my beliefs that he exists as a soul who has healed the pain he experienced in this life, but I'm not able to respond when she starts her scientific inquiry, trying to tie it all together. What came through for her from her dad was exactly what I was hoping for her, and the words she so desperately needed to find her peace. And that's why this is sacred work, isn't it?" So her dad in spirit, I feel, orchestrated the whole thing, even somebody who passed by suicide. And I say even because we in our human suits seem to think that that puts people in a different category, but the love that surrounds them when they pass, including angelic helpers who helped him heal his daughter in that way, is just stunning. And again, I'm so glad I didn't know anything going into that reading about why they both wanted to be in on it and who was across the veil. So if you are new to mediumship, trust the spirit world. They really know what they're doing. So I'm going to answer one or two questions because I have a very long follow-up to a reading I shared last month. And Bev will read questions that any of you may have already submitted through the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer them with my team, Sanaya.
Okay, the first one is anonymous. Do we choose our parents in each lifetime? If so, why do some people, are they not able to have children? Is that a lesson in particular?
For the first part, the guide said, absolutely, it is done as part of, they're using the word committee. They're telling me that why some can't have children in the first place is also a part of a soul agreement. And so until we have the bigger picture crossing the veil, we may need to see someone who specializes in past life regressions or soul contact, or you can ask your own guides. So there are going to be different reasons for everybody.
Okay, thank
But
you.
always lessons to be learned from that, no doubt.
Susan asks, have scientists from across the veil been assisting with the vaccine development here?
Oh, I wish you'd seen me. A big lip twitch there. And the guide said, you are never alone. Scientists, definitely there are scientists across the veil who continue to help with all medical issues, doing their best to inspire our scientists here and keep them doing what is in the interest of the greatest good.
Thank you.
All right. Let me just move on here. We'll come back and we'll do more questions like that throughout the evening. So if you were with us last month, I told about a wonderful reading for a beautiful young woman named Sharifa. I don't know if she's with us tonight or not. She lives in France, and her sister Veronique came through from across the veil. I had no idea who Sharifa hoped to hear from, but that was exactly it. Turns out Sharifa had cared for her for 13 years during Veronique's battle with cancer. Their mother came through briefly, and I didn't touch on that much in the last reading, but an email I got after the mentoring session made it very clear to me that it would be really cool to share with all of you how Spirit orchestrated in response to Sharifa's request, the mother's appearance. Okay. Oh, but first, Sharifa in that same email said that I should stop kicking myself when I don't feel that I get names correctly. She said 2 names came through and she didn't comment on them during the reading. One was, I said, there's somebody here named Mari. And she said, I have a very dear loved one here whose name is pronounced in French, Mari, and it came through exactly the way it's pronounced. But I have to read you what she said. She said another name that came through was Sarah. Thank goodness you've come to trust your guides more than your sitters, because during our reading, your sitter, Sharifa, she's referring to herself, thought to herself, who the hell is Sarah? It just cracked me up. I would not have expected that from Sharifa. Why would Veronique mention Sarah when we don't know anyone by that name? Suzanne, one of my good friends is Sarah, and she puts a little smiley face. In fact, the night before Veronique began transitioning and losing consciousness, Sarah had come over for dinner. Sarah cared for her mom before she died of cancer and had talked to me about connecting with her mom across the veil. I'm telling you, getting a reading from you can feel like a surreal experience where the sitter is more of a spectator than a participant. And this is what we call psychic amnesia. You get so caught up in what's happening and get in the same almost spacey state that the medium gets in, that, you know, who the hell is Sarah? And it turns out it was somebody very significant at the end of her sister's life and a very good friend to her. That's why, for those of you who are practicing mediumship, you learned that famous statement, trust the spirit, not the sitter. When you say Sarah and your sitter says, no, you just let it roll off and go moving on with the spirit. So one last thing about her reading that was absolutely fascinating does have to do with her mom. And she said that your communication or lack thereof with my mother is more evidence that our loved ones hear us. What happened is when her mother came through, I could sense her standing here, but I said, she's not saying very much. It must be that she wasn't very talkative. And Sharifa at the time said, no, that's not it at all. And I said, okay, well, let me just see what's happening. And I said, it's very interesting because again, I can feel her, but your sister is showing putting a basket over her head. It was just a visual, but it made no sense. I had never seen anything like that. And what's really the coolest thing is that during a reading with during a previous reading with another medium, Sharifa's mother did come through, and she was very talkative, so talkative that she took up most of the time. And it turns out that her mother was a narcissist, all about me, and would want to have the limelight. So before the reading, Sharifa put out a prayer that her mother kind of just stepped back so she could have time with her sister. And that's exactly what unfolded. Somehow mom was present, showed up, but this gently placing a basket over her mother's head is just this amazing symbology, like mom's just going to stand back. I don't understand why they chose the basket, but it's directly because they had asked her not to speak. How cool is that? And then what was really interesting is that she showed the video to her father, who is still here, of course. And he said, you know, I pretty much married my own mother in marrying your mother. She was a narcissist as well. Oh, goodness. And it turns out that in another, let me get it to see if I get it right. Well, it's just that his mother showed up and tried to steal more loving and open and change our ways. This is one of the things that the symbols that I see quite often across the veil is when the spirits do this, and it shows my eyes have been open to what's really important. Okay, so that is one of the lessons, that we keep growing and evolving even after we've left our people suits behind. How about another couple questions, Bev?
Okay. And also Sharifa is here and says, thank you, Suzanne.
Oh, nice. Hi, Sharifa.
Okay. Anonymous question again. Is it possible to waste a lifetime to come here and not carry out any of our plans?
The guides want me to answer that with incredible delicacy and to show the importance of seeing two different points of view. One thing we really focused on in the class, personal mediumship, last weekend. From the human point of view, we would say it is a waste of time, but from spirit, they say when you go to your true essence, all there is love in full expression. And while one may have great plans for the soul, there are moments in every life where we make a difference, either through a kind word or a touch, or saying or doing just the right thing at the right time. So from that point of view, from this higher view, it's impossible to waste a lifetime. Hope that helps.
Mm-hmm. Chris asks, I'm always curious about what we mean with Christ consciousness. Would Sanaya be able to expand on exactly what that is?
Yes. So I'm just making sure I'm tuned into them because I could answer it from this level. A Christ is one who knows the words I am refer to our unity at the deepest possible level, that we are inseparable as the one sea of love, divine intelligence, creativity, and self-awareness. This is complete unity. A Christ is not a religious term, but one who knows. In that vein, it's a spiritual term, they're saying. So Jesus was a Christ, And there are many, those who are awakening to our innate unity, our oneness, are all experiencing Christ awareness. A synonym for that is unity consciousness or unity awareness. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. One more.
Okay. Marilyn asks, is it common to experience an extended period of lightheadedness after practicing expanded awareness?
It is common. And of course, extended period would be subjective, but what is needed is to ground oneself after that. And there are various ways to ground yourself because you have a higher energy flowing through you. And if you're not used to that, it really can make you lightheaded. It's not an altogether unpleasant feeling, but can be unsettling. So just stamping your feet, doing something very physical, clapping your hands, drinking water, washing your hands, spraying sage, singing, and my favorite, eating chocolate. There are various ways of getting grounded, and also just taking a nice deep breath full of oxygen and just getting back into body awareness. Good question. All right. So more from the things that have unfolded in the past week. I did an interview last week with a woman. She's interviewing people about intuition for chapters in a book. And in it, we were talking about what I call the couple field. When you live with someone long enough, your energy field and their energy fields spend so much time merged just by being in the same space that you start to feel their feelings, know what they're thinking, even, of course, when you're not with them. Parents are like this with their children also. So there's the family field. We're just nested fields of love. And within hours of talking about the couple field, after the interview, I went out to do a little bit of shopping very nearby. I'm driving back into our community, and I'm probably half a mile from our house. And for some reason, the thought pops into my mind, gosh, it's been a long time since my husband Ty has gone fishing with our neighbor Tony. They should do that again soon. I round the corner, round the next corner, pull into the driveway, and there are Ty and Tony making plans to go fishing. You just gotta love it. But I'm sure this kind of thing happens to many of you, and I just want you to understand why. We're constantly radiating our own personal ringtone, our frequency, our signal, and it merges with those we live with to the point that we understand their signals clearly without even realizing what's going on. That's why I go for some reason, because it's very clearly we're just picking up on those consciousness ripples that are so familiar to us. Our brain just translates it automatically. All right. So I've really enjoyed a reading that a woman later said was life-changing for a woman in Europe, where she did not say who she wanted to hear from. And the only person who came through, I believe, was her father. Oh, she got so excited. That was exactly who she wanted to hear from. And my friends, when you have a system in mediumship, it's so easy to tell who it is. I get pulled my head like a pendulum right here. Those in spirit know, if you're a dad, you better stand over here. So I feel you there. And then he says, Daddy dearest. That's a symbol. That to me says, this is your father, not a stepfather, not a father-in-law, not a grandfather. And it was her dad. He then showed me a caduceus, trusting completely spirit. I said, and he was a doctor, because that's the symbol that means only that in my lexicon as a medium. And she said, yes. She just kept saying, amazing, amazing. And I hope I never stop thinking it's amazing, but it is how they cooperate with us. When you do this often enough, you can see how easy it becomes to work very quickly with the spirits, so then they can get to their messages, right? Yep, we've shown this is you. He made my heart palpitate to show that he passed from a heart attack, and it's just all kinds of evidence. But let me see, there was another reason I brought this up though. Oh yeah, we did get somebody else. Her grandmother came in then over here and showed me right away, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. weight on shoulders. And I said, your grandmother's talking about raising 5 children and how harried she was by the weight on her shoulders of taking care of these 5 children. Oh, amazing, the woman said again. So it's just so much fun when it flows like that. The grandmother told me that she and my client shared the same name, lots of evidence. And then the most amazing thing in this reading, I shared what I'm about to share in my personal mediumship this past weekend, but this was one of the most phenomenal readings I've had in a long time. This grandmother who shared the same name suddenly flashed in my mind's eye, Archangel Gabriel, just an image of him. Then this grandmother held up in my mind's eye the tarot card with the Fool on it. That's the first major card in the tarot deck. And I asked grandmother silently, why are you showing me the Fool card? And she just smiled. And then she told me that her granddaughter was contemplating a big stepping out some way, was going to take a new step in a new direction. And her grandmother was right behind her and she didn't have to fear anything at all. Well, this got several amazings in a row from my client, because at that very moment, she reached down, we're doing this by Zoom, and holds up the Fool card from a tarot deck. She says, this is my card. And I said, you have it right there with you and grandma's talking about it? She said, yes. And this morning, using another deck, I pulled the Archangel Gabriel card. So this is the kind of clarity that I pray for all the time. But that Fool card, I mean, I love when clients reach down and pick up something that the sitter talks about. It happens often, thank you, Spirit. But the Fool card, from saying, this is my card. And then minutes later, as more advice is coming from the grandmother, I got goosebumps, got pulled up here, and I said, and Archangel Michael himself just stepped in. Now, before grandmother just mentioned Gabriel, to have an archangel come in a reading is a bit unusual, but not unheard of for me. And my client said, amazing. He's my archangel. I call on him all the time. I love this work. If any of you are mediums in practice or hoping to be a medium, may Spirit serve you to help your clients in this way as well. But for the rest of you, may this buoy you to know that archangels are real, our loved ones are around, and they know what's going on. Okay, let's see. So Archangel's message actually from that reading pertains to all of us. He said, it is all one flow, one spirit. That's unity consciousness. That's Christ consciousness. When we tap into that. And so I realized later that this kind of clarity in the reading is really the answer to what I put on a piece of paper in my little God box. If you were with me, I think it was just last month or possibly the webinar before, where I showed you all how to have a little box. I call it my done deal box or my God box. You put a piece of paper on it and you hold your hand over and you affirm that what's in this box has already happened. It's not if, but when. And one of the things on there was, I think and see outside the box. I go beyond what is already known. And so to not hesitate to bring through, she's showing me Archangel Gabriel, she's showing me the Tarot Fool card, this is why, and here's Archangel Michael, and boom, boom, boom. That's not your ordinary, dad passed from a heart attack, he was an engineer, and he loves you very much. So I share this so we could celebrate the magic, but also to know that we can always step even farther outside of our box. Anything is possible because we are extensions of the field of all possibilities. How awesome is that to know that? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I'm going to keep going here without a couple more questions, because I promised in the email about this evening that I would share with you. We would talk about the flow, being in the flow, and just trusting Spirit helps you be in the flow. However, it's why are we not in the flow? because we're very human also. And it's our human nature to feel separate. But I had a huge aha that led to some incredible clarity, and I can't wait to share it with you. Usually it's at the expense of me revealing more things about myself and my poor time, my relationship with him. But shortly before that very reading, and this is one of the reasons that reading went so well, the aha that ensued from what I'm about to tell you. Shortly before that reading, I had come downstairs from my morning meditation right here across the room. And I always receive a message from Sanaya, the Daily Way message. And I received that. And I walked downstairs, and St. Ty was downstairs making breakfast, as he does, so I can meditate and get the message. So I came around the corner, and as always, I'm feeling really wonderful and clear. The day is just getting started. I've come out of meditation, connecting with my guides, and life is good. And I come around the corner, and my beloved husband has been reading the news. And he read something about some change in national policy that had him spun up big time. And he takes his phone and he puts it in my face and he says, "Look at this." I don't want to even say it the way it came through, with the energy that came with it. You can imagine. Can you believe what is happening here? Look at this, look at this. And this wave of what I call anger just went washing through me. And this is my husband. He's the former Navy captain. And I knew from day one, he has very strong opinions. And I love him. And it has been my greatest opportunity, that's such a good word, better than challenge, to learn to deal with those strong opinions. It's one of those things when you first meet your partner, you see some little red flags, but I love them, so they're not going to be a challenge, but they end up being your greatest opportunities, don't they? So over the years, so many times when that builds up, I want to run, and sometimes I do walk away. But in this case, I was working really hard to let that flow through me, kind of like cigar smoke. If somebody blew smoke in your face, if you just let it flow through, it will dissipate. It is temporary. But notice how I use the word, I was working hard to let it flow through me. Working is an interesting word. That indicates I wasn't flowing. It should have just been happening. So I'm standing there breathing, almost like blowing cigar smoke out, trying not to dismiss him, not to say, "Don't talk like that. I just came out of meditation." I've learned not to do that. And as I'm standing there, I suddenly felt the most incredible sensation of being lifted up. Like the man that came through in the reading with two angels on each side, I felt an angel on both sides of me lifting me up. And they said, "Roll around in this feeling you're having right now and just get muddy." Oh, I love that. Think about a little kid that goes out and gets muddy and rolls around in it and doesn't mind getting dirty. And then we get older and, "Oh no, I'm not supposed to get muddy. That's not good." And what they meant was, this is life, the good and the bad, the dirty and the clean. It's my opinions about he's not supposed to get angry, especially not right after I meditated. That's kind of how the human side goes. And he's just expressing himself. I didn't say anything. What I said was, "Isn't that interesting about the news?" I didn't want to dismiss him, but just get muddy. It felt so freeing, but that's not the big aha. However, at the time I thought it was a pretty big aha. So I went over to the couch to start typing up the Daily Way. And I picked up my phone and I texted the "just get muddy" thing to Lynette, because I thought that was pretty cool to share with her. And she replied, I'm going to read it at the risk of embarrassing Lynette. She wrote, "It's true. The mud is part of the wholeness, and resistance makes it uncomfortable." Suddenly, I had such a pay attention moment from my guides that I literally out loud went, oh. The insight was anger is part of life. All kinds of emotions, good and bad, are part of life. But it was those words that were given to Lynette that flowed through her to me that made it clear. It's not what's happening, it's our resistance that feels uncomfortable. Yes, fear and anger and guilt may have a different tone to them, but every one of them, if we somehow have a should that says, this shouldn't be happening to me, I need happiness, I'm supposed to be guaranteed pleasure all the time, the resistance is what's most uncomfortable because we're blocking the flow of life, which is love in full expression, the good and the bad, the muddy and the clean. So when we go against the flow, we are resisting what is. Some of this isn't new. I mean, for some reason, for the past month, if you go back, the Daily Way messages, many of them have been focusing on flow. And the results for me in the readings is a tremendous flow. The reading with the lady with the tarot card that followed after this was such an example of trusting and flowing. And yet Spirit is pointing out, by having Ty get in my face with that right at that moment, you're not completely in the flow when you resist what's going on. So I hope that this is giving some aha moments to some of you and having you, giving you the impetus to look at where you might be insisting that life go your way, that it has to be pleasant all the time, or whatever your shoulds and musts are, that it may not be that unpleasant feeling. So an incredible analogy I realized later, I can't remember where I saw it, but was, picture a magnet, maybe a long one like this. It has a positive end and a negative end, positive end and a negative end. If you had a way to cut off the negative end, guess what? You're still going to have a positive end and a negative end. So you cut it off a little shorter. I don't want this negative end. You're going to have a positive end and a negative end. You cannot get rid of it because the magnet in its wholeness innately has positive and negative. Think about the North Pole and the South Pole. No matter if you started chopping off the top of the globe, you're still going to have a North Pole and a South Pole, like two sides of one coin. The yin and the yang are inherent in wholeness. So when we say, well, they shouldn't get angry and run from it, or tell them we should only be happy, tell ourselves we should only be happy and things should only be positive, we are actually denying our wholeness. And that's another reason these things feel so uncomfortable when we resist that. All arisings of emotions are temporary, and they come and go. If we just notice them and say, isn't that interesting? This too shall pass. It will. And wholeness just keeps coming around and expressing himself. So get muddy, not pleasant always. Don't take abuse ever. Act on things that are painful. If somebody's hurting somebody else or you, no, ask Spirit how to handle that and never condone that. But feelings we resist that are part of our wholeness are anger and guilt, strong temper, strong opinions, fear, weakness, guilt, grief. Oh, I shouldn't be feeling grief anymore. Grief should end at a certain period. That's part of our wholeness. So just the week before, I found this very interesting. We had house guests for a few nights, and we had dinner with some mutual friends here, and politics came up. And my husband, I love with all my heart, had those strong opinions, and it comes out with a clenched fist, clenched face, and very strong emotion. And I clenched inside because this was prior to the resistance lesson. And I just wondered what our house guests were thinking, even though they know him. So we went for a walk the next day, and Ty was not with us. And I said to my house guests, I hope you're okay with the way Ty expressed himself last night. And their response was so eye-opening. They said, oh, that was great. We love his passion. Now, I still to this day don't know what their political opinions are because they don't even express them. They just loved his passion. And I thought to myself, I labeled that anger. They labeled that passion. Isn't that interesting? So I shared this with you because this kind of dynamics with our greatest teachers, the people we live with, our family members, is one of the joys of being here, to see through it, to see what's going on, to see the lessons and the opportunities in it. And I say joy because as we see what's really going on here, now we've opened up more of our ability to love each other. And anytime we can do that, our consciousness rises. If your goal is to connect with loved ones across the veil, you're going to be able to do that more easily because you are open, you are embracing your wholeness, and things are flowing. So I hope you enjoyed that little lesson. There's a part 2 to it, and it has to do with control. How many times have I tried to control a conversation with dinner guests so these passionate remarks don't come up? How many of you realize how exhausting it is to try to control the flow? So we'll get more on that in a minute, but I read a statement. No, we'll get to it right now. Guys say that when we try to control, we are playing God instead of trusting God, which is the flow itself. Wow. And I got to thinking about, I spent a career as a Navy officer. My last job was an aide to the head of the military. I needed to control things. I needed to make sure he was on time, that he didn't look bad or get embarrassed, that he had everything he needed. You talk about stress. So how does this relate to you? How are you trying to control life when the bottom line is we can only control things to a point? And what I was shown is ask your guides to take away your stress. They will show you how to prepare for whatever's on your plate. Follow that guidance. And after that, leave it to spirit, because the challenge is we don't control so much in this world. It just flows. That's life. And it's going to have the muddy and the clean and a lot of dirt, a lot of mud. And that's why I was so grateful, and it was beautiful to see Friday night before we started this big online course for a lot of people. Bev and I had gone through contingencies. What could go wrong? Let's do some practice sessions. We practiced. Bev came up with all the questions people might have. We put all of our human effort into it without stressing. And Friday night we contacted each other and I said, how are you feeling? And she said, I just feel peace. And I said, me too. It's like a miracle to just go with the flow. So I hope that this is helping you see that if you are stressing, you're playing God. Spoken from somebody who's spent many years doing that. We don't control everything because we can't control the other aspects of spirit around us. We don't have the big picture as long as we're in these little people suits here. So listen to the guidance, say, help me out here. What else do I need to know? And then when you've done everything you can, turn it over. Peace. Wow. All right. Yay. That was good. How about some Q&A, Bev, while I make sure I'm not missing anything here?
Yeah, actually, there's interesting question, little discussion in the chat right now. What about righteous anger at an injustice?
That's still going to be an opinion. You can test it in your heart. It's, oh, the guides say, anytime you take a stand, you are still only seeing half. You're not understanding that there's always going to be an opposite here, even when it's counter to love, and that when we can see the wholeness and have compassion, we can still take a stand. But can you feel the energy that goes with righteous? We sit up straight. I'm right. Then enough said about that. How does it feel? See from wholeness, but always act when appropriate from a place of love instead of righteousness. Yeah. Okay.
Beth asks, do we have to sit and concentrate or meditate first before we call out to our loved ones on the other side? Or can we just speak to them anytime and they can hear us?
Please. Such a great question. Absolutely speak to them anytime. They hear you automatically. The reason we would want to get into an expanded state if we're not open at the moment is because we may not sense what they say back or how they respond to us back. So that's why meditation is beautiful for really opening up and coming closer to their vibratory level. But as I showed in that class, and just with my connecting with Brenda right before we started here, I literally just do a little nod. I know she's here. Now, your loved ones may not always be that present. Brenda's always here before these events. So you can, if you really want to have a conversation, call them with your heart. My beloved, I'm just saying that to fill in all the blanks. I would love to have a little conversation. Will you draw near, please? And that's really just a concession to our living in a world of geography and space and time. To draw near for them means will you just connect your heart with mine, because they're here in the spaceless, timeless realm.
Okay.
How about one more?
Diana asks, when a person is in a comatose state and their soul might be going back and forth, the spirit realm to here, what are they doing?
They're talking to their guides, communicating with loved ones who have passed, and doing what other loved ones across the veil do, which is using their consciousness to immediately create whatever they think about. Yeah, good questions. Thank you. Thanks, Beth. So one more thing about flow and resistance and how that feels in us, what it does to our energy and our connection to spirit. In the Bless Me method, the first S in Bless Me stands for surrender, and we say, I surrender. And I've had people across the years tell me they don't like saying that. It feels like weakness. I surrender. So you could say, then how about I'm not just being non-resistant to reality. Of course, that doesn't fit in the acronym, but it's instead of surrendering, which is an action, we simply are non-resistant. That doesn't mean passive inaction. Once again, if there's something that needs to be done, if somebody's really being nasty to you, which Ty was not, and never, by the way, he is never nasty to me. He's just expressing his passion about the news. Non-resistance doesn't mean passive, but I want to be very clear how I'm using the term non-resistance. I'm not talking politically at all. I'm talking electrically. When we have a conduit, energy flows through a conduit. Resistance is something that slows down the flow of energy. And there are certain conduits that are better transmitters of energy than others. The precious metals, silver and gold, are some of the best energy conduits that there are, which I love, because we always say that love, the gold light, or love is gold, and it's silver and gold. We value them. If we can make our vibration like the precious metals, we're a better conduit. And it's interesting that plastic is a terrible conduit, and that's man-made. So our man-made thoughts cause us, our shoulds, our musts, our have-tos, to resist the flow of life. So just some visuals there, okay? So how do we respond to life? Again, we flow with it. We don't run from the negative. Of course, we don't stand there and take pain, but emotions that we might not want to feel in ourselves, but also don't necessarily only run towards the positive. Both will just flow with no effort whatsoever if we just observe, and take appropriate action. So I also promised you this evening 2 powerful words to remain in the flow. It's really funny as I study myself, when my beloved partner brings up an idea, one of the first things I do is think of the opposite side. Yes, but, or no, but, and I don't know why my mind does that. Maybe I was trained to look at all possibilities, but we've been talking in these webinars about how life is sometimes like a dream state according to the higher levels. It's also a play on a stage, and that it's really like improv. And it turns out in the rule of improvisation, none of the actors have any control. They are not allowed to control the flow of the acting. So the 2 words I wanted to share with you this evening that I've been really trying to use myself, and it's tremendous, is instead of no, but, or yes, but, no matter what the other actor in your life, whoever's in your face, says, respond with yes, and. Yes, and. Yes, that is interesting news. And I wonder how else one might look at that. You say yes to acknowledge this is what's happening. This is reality. Even if somebody, when you might want to be righteous, whatever they said is a yes, that's what they said. Everybody wants to be acknowledged. And during that, and this is when we tune into spirit, our own higher self, or our guides, with the intention of receiving what is the highest possible response now. That's the improv part of life. I choose joy to come after that and, but sometimes it won't be possible. You know, you can think of all kinds of terrible things that could happen. Yes, and the most appropriate action next is this. Do you feel how yes and keeps us from negating reality? It keeps us in the flow. In my work, I try to relate everything in the human life to mediumship, because my greatest goal is the clearest possible connection with spirit. A sitter, you give them a piece of evidence from their loved one, and they say, no, that's wrong. And I've had some sitters say it like that too. No. So you just say yes, and let's get another one that's right, instead of resisting that you were wrong. So there's just so many beautiful ways to use that. I hope you'll give it a try in the next few weeks and see how that works for you. Okay, Bev, how about a couple more questions?
Okay. Anonymous question. Why does everything that lives in the physical realm have to consume or eat something else that was living? This seems inconsistent with our efforts of unconditional love.
Oh, it's this interesting question. And the guides, even before the question was out of her mouth, said part of the rule set. It's almost as if this is like a virtual reality, and it's programmed that we're going to have this chain of life where there's the animal kingdom, and this is how the animals are sustained, and it's just part of the rule set. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm sure we could go into that even deeper, but that's the answer for now.
Okay. Margaret asks, when someone has had parents and family that were very neglectful and abusive, who will be there to meet the son or daughter when they pass over?
Absolutely. Your guides and others in your soul family who you may not have remembered. Angels surround you. There will be a welcoming party. Don't you worry about it. And God willing, your loved ones who were abusive may have had a complete change of awareness, have really worked on themselves, and greet you in such a way that you won't be able to deny that change has taken place. You'll recognize each other at a soul level, not the human level, and the tears of emotion and joy at seeing the true nature of all of you will become so apparent. And you'll look at each other and say, how could we not have seen that while we were here? Wouldn't that be a blessing for all of us to see the souls in each other here and now? Well, then we wouldn't hurt each other at all, would we? Okay. Doing wow. How about one more, Bev? And then I have some more stuff to share.
Okay, this actually is very similar. Jeff asks, what happens when a murder victim meets the murderer on the other side?
I'm hearing in my lip twitch, in many cases, instant forgiveness through understanding. Everything is transmitted telepathically to show the choices that were made and why, out of ignorance, of course, of who we really are. And lessons continue across the veil. I'm being shown that in many cases, the murderer is accompanied by guides, just like that man in the reading I showed earlier who took his own life. The guides are helpers, the guides are escorts, and they serve a purpose of just infusing every encounter and every situation with higher levels of love. All right. Okay, so I'd like to share an example from a reading of how non-resistance can help tremendously in connecting with the other side. So this is another one of those, for me, it showed another example of my God box, my done deal box coming true again, getting outside of my own box and the flow and the trust and how that helps. Just so you all know, I've been doing readings for a dozen years now, and it really does just keep getting better. I've been very, very happy with my readings since the beginning, and yet higher and higher levels of flow and clarity just is like the ongoing miracle. And that's my prayer for all of you. So I did a reading about 2 weeks ago for a woman, and this was funny. She couldn't identify the two people who came through. I'm 10 minutes into it. I identified talking about this one person, and I went on and on and on about 6 things, personality of this person. She's not saying a word. And I said, so do you recognize this person? Nope. Okay, nothing. Nope. All right. And at this point, I always advise, don't leave the spirit hanging. Try a little more. You can't really try, but be passive and ask the spirit to give you some more. Trying is counterproductive. And this is when the human side wants to get it right, but you just surrender again. Give me some more. Still nothing. So then I move over here. I'm pulled over here by a motherly figure. Describe her personality. I get some evidence. She played the piano. She died from, I can't remember what she died from. Boom, boom, boom. Do you recognize this woman? Because she's not, my sitter's not saying a word. Nope. This doesn't match your mother, your mother-in-law, a stepmother, somebody that was like a mother. Nope. At this point, my guide Brenda goes like this. I said, I'm being told to set this reading aside. I believe we should try later. I really feel that the first person that came through, your sister, will recognize her. I don't know what's going on with this mother figure. And the coolest thing about this is to call off the reading 10, 15 minutes into it like that, with such knowing, such trust of the spirits. It was one of the first times when I was completely not knocked off balance by that. It was just, oh, well, there's something going on. I don't know what it was, but there have been so many times, and I know so many mediums who will lick their wounds for days after a reading like that. Oh, it was terrible. I'm so embarrassed. It was awful. And that's what makes this challenging, this work. How many of you can identify with this? But in this case, it was, oh, well. So I went downstairs, come down after 10, 15 minutes. Ty looks at me and he says, didn't go well. And I said, nope, I don't know what's going on, but I was told, set it aside. I'm just going to go back and work on this project. So I'm sitting at my computer. It's like 5 minutes later, my text goes off. It's Lynette. She says, it's the woman's mother-in-law. She wants to try again. I laughed. And I kind of looked up to my team. What do we do? Okay, I'm really not involved in this project right now. I would set this time aside anyway. I haven't completely shut down. So I stand up, I go back past Ty. I said, honey, we're going back and have at it again. He just laughed. I go upstairs. I sit down, just kind of, it's just a quick opening up, deep breath. I get her on Zoom and now she's there with her husband on camera. I said, hi again. And she says, I'm so sorry. I left the room and I got my husband. And I said, what could you take? He said, she passed that way. That was her personality. She played the piano. He went boom, 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 boom. 5 things. I don't know if it was psychic amnesia or if my sitter, she said she knew her mother-in-law, but he said, that's my mom. So we go back into the reading and this woman is now here again. She's waiting and she had a message for her son, which was just beautiful. And then her mom came in with messages that she, the original sitter, really needed to hear. But isn't that interesting how it was orchestrated that way? And it never would have happened if we don't just trust the process, not resist what's happening, just flow with it. And it's interesting. I know I only thought of it today when I was reviewing my notes. There are times when, and happily, it's not that often, but there are times when things just don't click. And I know many times I can tell when it does happen, it's my energy or just no rapport with the sitter. Various things go into a reading not going well, but I'll see this sign from my guide, call it off. But I realized Brenda had not said call it off. She said, set it to the side. And that's exactly what we did, never realizing we were coming back 5 minutes later. So I hope this helps those of you who are practicing mediumship. Those of you who aren't, I hope you find it interesting how the spirit world works with us. One more reading. I have emphasized in probably the last 4 monthly webinars how important it is to make sure that you and your client share a very clear intention for the reading. If you're not a medium, but you go to a medium, have a clear intention of what your purpose is. Is it to hear from loved ones? Is it really because you just want to get guidance? Have in mind who you want to hear from, but you don't have to say that to the medium, but sending out that heartfelt, come be with me during the reading to your loved ones is very effective in making sure that they know all about it. It's that lighting up a circuit with the ripples of your conscious field that draws your loved ones near. My guides say that again. When we were talking earlier about do our loved ones hear us when we talk to them, you don't have to say it out loud. You literally think about them and it goes out in 360 degrees from you, like dropping a pebble in a pond, ripples. And the pond is the sea of consciousness. And your loved ones know the ripples of your energy field, just like I picked up on Ty talking about going fishing with our neighbor. You recognize those ripples, whether you're in a body or not. So I found it really interesting. I've learned to sit down with my sitters now before reading and I say, I'd like to know your intention for this reading, but don't tell me who exactly you want to hear from. I want to leave that up to spirit. That way we don't look like we're fishing. We're making no assumptions. We're trusting the spirits to come through. But here is exactly why this is important. I'm going to read you what she said. Well, I'm dealing with a lot of issues right now, so I really want more of a psychic reading or to hear from my guides. I really don't have any hope of hearing from anyone in spirit. I almost embarrassed myself because I burst out laughing when she said that. And then I quickly told her, please, I mean no disrespect by laughing, but with that intention, I really don't hope to hear from anyone. We won't. Do you understand, everybody? If I hadn't asked her, what is she sending out to the spirit world? Yeah, you guys might be out there, but I don't have any hope of hearing from you. Intention is so important. And so I said, well, how about if we set then the intention to see what your guides say about your issues, and if any loved ones show up, we're totally open to them being here. She said, okay, that sounds good. So we started the reading, and it again was one of those God box, done deal box, dream come trues. If you haven't tried the dream box or didn't weren't in on that webinar, please try it because it's phenomenal, the difference that it makes. Whatever your prayer is, to put it in that box and know that Spirit knows what your desire and your dream is, and to know it is done, not if, but when. So as a result, during this reading, it was stunning to say, to tune in and to have her guides come in. Now, I don't see them, couldn't tell male or female. I just get pulled up here and it's a higher energy. And I said, well, you're dealing with contemplating a move eastward, east in the United States. And her eyes went like that. She nods her head yes. And I said, and the guides tell me you're in the middle of a divorce and you have 2 children that are part of this. And she goes like this, and she goes like, yes. And inside I'm saying, wow. And then it turns out, I mean, several other issues came up that were just spot on. It's one of those things. How does this work, everybody? Remember the couple field? We create a reading field. I merge with her energy field. The guides know her intimately. Everything is right here. When you go with the flow, don't resist what's coming up, but trust it. It's right here. It becomes your knowing that these are the issues. So what was really stunning was she wanted clear answers. I don't know what to do about this one specific situation. And I said to her, well, guides have told me, and my own guides have told me, they are not usually allowed to give us answers to big life questions like you're dealing with now. That the decision you make determines the next steps on your path. And that's why we come here, to make these big life decisions. Everybody listening? And this advice has come through in multiple readings, but in this case, the guide said, let's walk her through it with a twist. I didn't know what the twist was. I believe I shared this in the weekend class this last weekend. So if you were there, maybe you'll hear something new this time. However, I said, all right, close your eyes with me. We're both going to do this exercise together. You've told me you have 2 options. Let's now move forward in time as if you've already decided for option A. Let's put ourselves completely in that situation. Let's feel the emotions with it. Let's see the people involved. Let's completely visualize the physical surroundings. And I was there with her. What the twist was that really blew me away was when I said to her, now that you're in this situation, having made that decision, what is your body telling you? And what's so cool is my body was already telling me this is a no. I felt my gut clenching. It was hers, but mine, because we had that shared field, was telling me the answer. But the guides are saying to me, you're not allowed to tell her. So I said, what is your body telling you? What do you feel? And she said, it feels really tight right here. And I said, this is so cool. And I said, well, that's a no. And then you repeated it. We repeated it with decision B. And what was really interesting was we felt tension now in the heart. I felt it, but didn't say it. I said, what do you feel and where? Notice I'm sharing this with all of you because this is a beautiful method for you to use when you need to make a decision. Knowing your guides are still helping you to become sensitive to these feelings. They'll guide you how to go through the exercise, but you are tasked with tuning into what is your response. So we got 2 no's, and then the guides said, compromise. And I said, well, you're stuck on A and B. What would be a compromise? And right off the bat, she had one. This is what's stunning. And she said, well, we could also do this. And I said, now let's go through that scenario. You're now living there. This is who's with you. See the surroundings. This is the house. This is the school. And I felt the flow just go whoosh. And I said, how does that feel now? Feeling it in my body. She said, feels pretty good. And I said, and what is that? She said, my answer. And I said, yes, it is. Isn't that great? So teaching from the spirit world, an example from a reading, something we can all use and celebrate how our guides work with us, how we can tune into the body. And I hope that's just super helpful for you. Then, as if that was the end, right? She didn't have any hope of hearing from someone. We got this guidance, knew her guides know what's going on in her life. In steps, Daddy Dearest, my symbol. For a father, her father. And what was really amazing was he showed he'd been out of her life since she was about 3 years old. And her quote was, he was so estranged, she hadn't even thought about him until that very morning. And that was why she really didn't have any hope of hearing from anyone. And that was really the only person she had across the veil. She was rather young. But he then went on to deliver some very healing messages to show clearly that even though he'd been estranged from her, his soul was not estranged. And across the veil now, of course, souls are never estranged, still part of our lives. They see what's going on. And that he said he was working on himself across the veil until they could meet face to face. So there's an example pertaining to that question we had earlier of she might have thought she didn't want to see him, but a totally different human side is going to show up soul to soul. They already know each other. All right. So bottom line, be aware you don't have to go through anything on your own. Your guides know everything about you. About some more questions, Bev?
I'm unmuted, right? Yes. Okay.
You are.
Safina asks, has Brenda ever described how you and Lynette appear to her? Are you on a screen in front of her? Do you look exactly like you look to us?
I'm going to have to ask her. But I never asked her, but I just know we look like she knows us and she's right here with us. Because she did show up for me one time when I was asking about, are you really here in the room like we think of it? And she stood in front of me and she held up a tube of lipstick. I could only see it in my mind's eye, but in my mind's eye could see her moving in front of me. But it's in here. I hope that makes sense to all of you. But it's Brenda as I know Brenda. And she held up a tube of lipstick and says, Lynette just found her same old lipstick and opened it this morning. And then she went ta-ta and walked right through the closet door to disappear. I texted Lynette and she had told me several weeks ago she couldn't find the same old lipstick she wears all the time. She found it, but never told me. And at 4:30 that morning had opened a brand new tube of it. I don't know where she was going at that hour, but yeah. So she appears to us as we would recognize her. Oh, wow. Okay. She's saying right now, oh, she says she sees us the way we are because she loves us that way. But then she just said, and I see you. And she used our spirit names. So she's actually told us how we're known in the spirit world. And she sees us with those names. And she's just showing me like orbs. All of you are beautiful lights, she said. So she's showing this motion that we can see each other however we want. And then she says it's superimposed, an orb around you and through you, or there you are in your human form, because that's familiar and they love it.
Wow, great.
That's cool.
And a related question, when you chat with Brenda, this is an anonymous question, when you chat with Brenda or other loved ones, do they have the same voice as you knew here?
When I knew them here, they do. I only have about 4 examples of that because I don't have 5, 6. I don't have that many people across the veil. But what stunned me most about Brenda coming through was it was her voice. And over the past year or so, talking with her, less and less I hear her voice. because it's just telepathic now. It's instantaneous, fleeting, and it's just right here. So it's easier to not use a voice. You can understand that. But just the other day, I said, Brenda, I missed your voice. And boom, she just turned it back on. It was so cool. Because even with somebody you love with all your heart, you tend to forget that until you hear it again. My Susan, I hear in her voice, my mother and father, and Wayne Dyer came through in his voice for me. And then Albert Einstein, I may not have ever heard his voice, but I heard a German accent in a deep voice. Everybody else sounds like my own thoughts. That's just me. It may be different for other people.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on. We'll do more Q&A. I want to talk for just a minute about the development circles that Bev has helped put together, and I announce these occasionally during these mentoring sessions. A development circle is a way of meeting with kindred spirits on the spiritual path with you, who get together weekly as a group on the internet or in person, but usually in our case on the internet, to practice tuning in to the spirit world, to discuss spiritual topics, a variety of reasons agreed upon by the group, but they're called development circles. And I announce it here. People email Bev saying, I'd like to be part of a circle. And she puts you all together by general time zone, so you can meet at an hour that's about the same for each of you. And we've put together how many groups, Bev, in the last few years?
Probably 25 or so.
Yeah, and it's just a service that we do because we know how many of you would love to talk about these topics with other people, but you don't know people or there's nobody around you. And so we just put you together and then you're completely on your own. But I say we, Bev's done all the work and I believe she's handing it off to Lynette now, which is going to be lovely. But I wanted to just thank Bev for that and then thank 3 new circles that we have. Each one requires somebody to volunteer to be the leader to organize that and get everybody together. So I want to just thank Amy Pittman for our new Eastern Central Time Zone group, Tanya Chan for our Mountain and Pacific Time group, and Linda Culver for our UK Central Europe group. And something that's really cool is one of the leaders, Holly Schwartzel, has actually organized a circle for the circle leaders so they can get together and discuss great ideas of what each circle does and what other circles may want to try. Isn't it just beautiful, the power of the internet bringing us together in literally our own webs of connection? So Bev, who do they reach out to? How do they, if anybody's listening and wants to be part of a circle?
For right now, I'll put my email in the chat box. Lynette and I are still working this out. And you can just email me. I need your name, your email, your location, and your time zone. And then we can get you in the right place. And also, just this is hot off the press. I didn't have time to tell you, Suzanne. Actually, Amy has switched with another person. Rainey Rogers is doing the Eastern time zone. So thanks to her for stepping up for that. And Linda in the UK, France sort of time zone, they're looking for more members. So especially anybody who's interested, email me and you have a circle already to step into.
It's really cool. I will say, think hard about it at first because any new member does change the energy in a group. And if you're not committed to it and you leave, that's felt by the group. So know that you'll be able to commit time to that regularly. But I will tell you that the feedback we get is the people in these groups come to really bond with each other and love each other, which is just a beautiful thing. Speaking of groups and this sign game I play with Brenda, I really recommend any of you do that with a loved one across the veil, whether it's a guide or a loved one. They enjoy it because it's their way of showing you we really are here. But set a specific time to meet with them. Brenda knows I'm going to play this sign game with her every time I get ready to do a reading or teach a class. I don't call on her all the time. I don't expect her to be around me all the all the time. She just laughed at me like, yeah, I have better things to do too. They're busy across the veil. So find what would be a good time to connect with this loved one of yours, something that you might do maybe once a day or once a week, whatever is not going to be keeping them, because they are busy across the veil. And then you just shift your focus to the greater reality and ask them what's going on with somebody else in our life, but pick somebody specific. And clearly, in the case of my game with Brenda, I always ask her, what's Lynette doing that I couldn't possibly know about? And then whatever you sense, you validate it with that other person. And it is so affirming and so much fun and keeps you connected. And the reason I bring it up again now is because I received an email a couple of weeks ago from Mary, who's a member of Soul's Awakening group online, who is a former student of mine who now has her own group, like a development circle, I believe it is, that she sits in. And she said, when I heard you chatting about asking Brenda what Lynette is doing, I shared it with my small group last night during our weekly get together. I suggested we do it ourselves for a week. The only difference is we're asking our guides as opposed to asking our friend. All right. So later I get an email from her. Holy moly, it works. It's like, yeah, of course it works. And she said, it's not that I didn't think it would, but it's like with every reading, right? It still amazes me and fills us with joy. And I asked her who they ask about their guides to tell them a current event about, like a friend, okay, my guide, tell me what's going on with so-and-so now. And what they did, and those of you in the development circle may want to try this, is they have a little like a chain going on. My guides will tell me what's going on with this person, and this person will ask their guide to tell them what's going on with that person, so that when their group gets together again, they go around the circle and they validate it with each other. See, life is about playing with spirit and flowing with spirit, and you can see how this leads to a beautiful connection across the veil. The only veil is these bodies that keep us from sensing how close those in spirit really are. All right. Now, I promised all of you, for those of you who are not a big fan of meditation, I was going to share a fantastic new method of training the mind to be quiet. Again, this is something I shared in this class this last weekend, but I'll bet those of you that were there wouldn't mind if we spend 5 minutes on it, because it's just tremendous. I give complete credit to my guides who shouted at me, get up at 3 a.m, so they could share this with me. One of the biggest things I hear from people is excuses for why they don't keep up a meditative practice. And meditation is one of the most transformative things you can do for your life here, and one of the best things you can do for increasing your connection with those who have passed, whether that's your own loved ones, other people's loved ones, and of course your guides as well. Why? It opens space in your awareness. It quiets your busy mind and it trains you to be focused. So with the normal excuses for meditation include, I don't have the time, I don't have the patience, my mind is too busy. So what my guides showed me is anybody can sit for 3 minutes. And all you need to do is sit in peace and ask one question and focus on that one question and the answer you received. And they said, this practice will be having a sip of the divine, where sip stands for sit in peace. So how do you like the feel of this? I'm going to go meditate for half an hour, or I'm going to go have a sip of the divine. I love that. I still meditate, but this sip of the divine, you could do it multiple times a day. And here's how it goes. The first part does not count towards the 3 minutes, but you sit quietly with an intention to open your mind and become focused and get guidance, connecting with higher consciousness. So having the intention is ongoing every time you do this. And I would recommend you ask the same question every time, because it's going to change frequently, the answer that you get. So you sit in a place where you won't be disturbed and you can close your eyes to shut out the outer world. And you take at least one centering breath, just like we did at the beginning when we did an invocation. Breathe in slowly and exhale longer than you inhale, so that you press on the vagus nerve and trigger the body's relaxation response. So take that deep breath and feel yourself dropping into a nice relaxed state. And then you simply shift your awareness from limited human with a narrow focus on me to your innate state as pure presence, as this I am awareness, the sea of consciousness itself. That's our innate nature. It's already present. That's your peaceful nature that's already here. Once you've done that, and it shouldn't take you more than a minute, then literally set a timer, which I'm going to do right now on my clock for all of us. You don't have to do it. I'm doing it for us. And for the next 3 minutes, connected now to whatever aspect of higher consciousness has the answer for you. Leave that open, please. Could be a loved one, guides, or source itself, your own higher consciousness, your soul. It's all one at unity consciousness. You ask, what do I need to know right now? And then you become passive and receive whatever comes up. We can call it listening, but it's more like sensing, because you're listening for thoughts, but you're sensing any images, you're sensing what you feel, and especially what you just know, because your guides may send it to you in a burst of knowing, like some of the transmissions from Brenda and my guides, just boom, it's all there and you don't even need to unravel it. You got your answer. Thoughts will absolutely intrude. Notice them. If they do not directly answer your question, if they're not new and insightful and something you need, you simply notice it. And like a cloud in the clear sky, just let it drift by as you say again, calmly, what do I need to know right now? And you go back to listening. If you get a very clear answer, engage whatever higher being gave it to you. Well, what do you mean? I'd like more info on that. You say silently, you just think it back. Or where do I go from here? And you have a conversation. You may not get an answer every time, but at least you're training yourself to be open and spacious. So would you like to try it? I think we should. No shoulds, right? But let's do it. So I have my timer here. 3 minutes after we start, would you join me with the intention of opening your mind, and that the highest possible being who has great insight and advice for you right now is going to somehow get that insight through to you. Close your eyes and take in a nice relaxing breath. The energy is already super high. We've created as a group. Just release anything, any doubts, anything that doesn't serve you. Exhale nice and slowly. And now simply shift your focus. No longer identify with yourself as a story, a person with your name. Just be one with spirit. And I'm starting my timer. Begin now. Ask the question, what do I need to know now? And ask it repeatedly as thoughts come up that don't pertain. And there's the timer. So just send out a wave of gratitude for whatever happened, knowing that it's all perfect, and come back into awareness of your body. And if you need to make a note of what you received, you'd want to write that down so you don't lose it. But you can see the perfection in that, because who can't spare? I heard the same thing. Somebody just chatted, you are deeply loved. What a nice message to hear. Who can't spare 3 minutes? But it's also long enough, just long enough that you're not just rushing through 1 minute to move on to the next thing. It really shows just a little bit of dedication, and it gives you that time to attune just a little bit more deeply. So they say it takes 3 weeks to establish a new habit. Can you commit to doing that every day for 21 days and see how that changes things for you? Sit in peace, take a sip of the divine. It's your true nature. And the more you sit to do that, the more you come to know, I am this peace. Gratitude to Spirit for that. All right, let's see. Speaking of being awakened in the middle of the night, it was so cool. Lying there, can't sleep, so I'm thinking about this web that we're all a part of and how we're all interconnected, and trying to think of a way to just use the internet to describe this web and how to teach it better. And that's again when I heard get up, and I was thinking about that Chief Seattle wall hanging I have in my home that says, we are all mankind has not created the web. He is a strand in the web, and it's all of creation. I can't remember it at this moment, but I went out to the living room and I hear, pull Wolf's message off the shelf, the book I wrote about the young man named Wolf. I pull it down, I open it up, and I open it directly to the page with Chief Seattle's quote. It just blew me away. And I said, all right, why am I supposed to be seeing this right now? Clearly, this is the web at work. And a quote on the same page or a nearby page jumped right out at me. I don't want to get it wrong. See the world as it is, not as our physical senses report it. Just a reminder to all of us, there's so much more going on here than we recognize. And I hope all of this evidence that we've shared this evening has shown you that. And Brenda right now is saying, see, that's what I was saying to you. I can see you as a ball of, I love how that came together, as a ball of light or as a physical being. We don't have to leave our bodies to see each other that way. We have soul senses right now. That's how mediumship works. That's how you connect with your loved ones across the veil. If we could see the light in and around each other, how would that change our world? So just take that to mind, please. And as I ask the spirits to give me a sense of that, what is it like to see the world with soul senses? I could feel energy arcing off of me. It was literally like a zzz, 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 feeling like that. And I thought that was so interesting, since Wolf was struck by lightning, and it was a very electrical feeling coming off of me. But the bottom line is trust the web. They got me up. I'm thinking about the web. I opened the book to the web. I hope that you will start to pull the strings like that and see the connections of the web. I received an anonymous gift package in the mail recently, and I got a note from Mike and Beth, Wolf's father and stepmother. They also received an anonymous gift package the same day from a woman in Nevada, one of our states out west that's mostly desert, who was reading Wolf's message. I've shared this in one other venue, but she is the perfect example of somebody who learned to listen to the inspiration being downloaded from Spirit, acting on it, following it. While reading that book, she got up one day to go run an errand, and she clearly felt, you need to go to this other town, just like when your guides say, get up, or whatever you're guided to do. She followed that voice, ended up walking into a gift shop, and walked in, and there were 2 red roses blown out of glass. The cover of the book has 2 red roses that are very meaningful in the story. And she just knew she had to buy those for Mike and Beth. She bought them, left the store, went out, looked up, and there's Dreamcatcher Street, which is Dreamcatcher straight out of the book. She left when she wanted to go right, but she knew she was supposed to go that way, walked in another gift shop, and there in the middle of the desert of Nevada are snowshoes, which are clearly mentioned even on the page I just read from, another poem from Woolf in that book, snowshoes, because the weave of their web is synonymous with this web that we're all part of. She's just a beautiful example of somebody who connects the dots, acts on the intuition, those intuitive senses. I need to go here instead of there. And the more you act on it, the more the magic comes up into your life. By the way, I recently recorded a highly energetic conversation with Michael Sandler of Inspire Nation podcast. I've been on his show twice, like 265,000 views, because the energy is off the chart when he and I get together. And he's been on my radio show recently, and he called me and said, Suzanne, I want to sit in that energy some more. Let's get together. So we recorded a whole talk about Wolf's message and the web, and we're going to air it Thursday night of this week live on his Facebook page. It's pre-recorded, but he and I will be in the chat room chatting with anybody who shows up. I will be posting the info on that on my Facebook page, and I don't know how else we'll get it out to the world, but I believe if you'll be able to watch it on his Facebook page. But that should be a really scintillating evening, just an hour. 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, 5:30 Pacific, and wherever else you are in this world. All right, a couple more questions, and then, nope, we're going to skip the questions for now, because I did promise in the email that went out just a way to show you how spirit flows through us all. I was shown several ways to envision how spirit flows. We humans like to break things up into categories, dimensions, levels, when it's really one big spectrum. But Spirit showed me you can think of the whole ocean of consciousness. That's our source. So think of that as source. And the ocean kind of narrows itself down to a wave. You're familiar with that, right? But let's talk about the oversoul. We'll go from source to an oversoul, a collection of souls that narrows itself down into a soul, and ultimately to the human role. But source is constantly flowing out and back again, like an out breath and an in breath. So source, oversoul, soul, you, your soul, your oversoul, source. It's one big spectrum. I don't want to get this wrong. Ocean, river, stream, and eddy was the other explanation. Source is like the ocean. It flows down into more narrowly into a river, then a stream, and there within those streams and rivers are little standing waves. That would be you and me, but still part of that greater flow. And Source says that when we identify only with our human side, that's like synonymous with we're seeing through a glass, but it's dark. We're not seeing our true source. When we identify with ourselves as the soul, that's like the glass clears a little and we're seeing through the glass dimly. When we expand our awareness that we are not these narrow focuses and we identify with ourselves as fields of souls and oversoul, now we're seeing through the glass, finally. And when we come to know I am all of this ultimately that narrows its focus, then we're not seeing through the glass darkly, through the glass dimly, through the glass at all. We've had a breakthrough. And that's the goal for all of you. That's why we share the evidence and the stories. And I hope that just learning to see yourself in ever more expansive and spacious ways, knowing that it's all available to you here because you are the flow, not a thing, the very being itself of consciousness, awareness. It's when we get stuck in our resistance, afraid to get muddy, as we talked about earlier, that we suffer. And it's my greatest desire that something that I've shared here this evening has helped you have some kind of a breakthrough. Okay. Wow. My utter gratitude to Spirit. There are some little things that I didn't even get to share. I've already have pages for next month. So I hope that you got enough out of it. You'll come back and join us as one big development circle around the world, and just know how immensely loved we all are. We all are. I love you all so much, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you to Bev and Lynette, as always, for helping make this possible. Have a great month, everybody. Bye-bye.